It was back in the 1st century BC when the Greek historian Diodorus Seleucus said, "It's absurd to entrust the defense of a country to people who own no part of it." It was in acknowledgement of the timeless wisdom of this ancient sage that a third party and its dynamic candidate, Abraham Lincoln, took the field in our elections in 1860. Within 2 years of his election, President Lincoln had won passage of the most significant legislation in the party's platform, the Homestead Act of 1862, a platform based on the thesis that it is absurd to entrust the defense of a country to a people who own no part of it. The Homestead Act offered the landless white citizens of America part ownership of the country by giving them 160 acres of frontier land free if they produced on it income for themselves and their families for a period of 5 years. The new Republican Party slogan then might well have been what the slogan emblazoned on our chests right now is, "Own or be owned." Own property or be owned by others. We've come here today to stand before the likeness of Lincoln to proclaim the fact that were he here today and alive, Lincoln would be here with us to urge this nation, as we do now, to establish a capital Homestead Act, one that makes it possible for every American to become an owner of productive capital and not just the tiny elite who now own our corporations. We do it by reactivating the Section 13 of the Federal Reserve Act of 1913 to supply asset-backed currency through the discount windows of each of the 12 Federal Reserve banks to American citizens for two purposes. One, the sustainable, non-inflationary regional growth of industry, commerce, and agriculture through capital homestead accounts for the people, not just for the corporations. And two, to demonopolize the power of money, productive credit, and ownership as the means of production by decentralizing the power to the people through their local banks. That one of the intentions of the Federal Reserve Act of 1913 was to enable what we call the homesteading of capital for the private sector development. Section 13 of the Act gave the Federal Reserve the power to create and discount eligible paper for private sector industrial, commercial, and other productive uses. The Act establishes a network of lenders of last resort for the banking system. Access to the discount window was to be granted, however, only and the bank paper was based upon the production, transportation, and warehousing of real private sector goods and services. We can move that to a growing income independence for every citizen through expanding capital accumulations and dividend checks. We can control government spending through a tax system that encourages accelerated rates of investment, sustainable green growth in urban and rural communities, and widespread ownership opportunities. We can eliminate the double tax on corporate profits and job-destroying Social Security, Medicare, and other payroll taxes. We can eliminate all taxes for people below the poverty line. We can provide citizens reporting incomes below the poverty level, including charitable contributions, with a monthly check to meet their basic subsistence needs until their capital homesteading dividends and labor incomes for new jobs rise above the poverty level. We can create the equivalent of a Marshall Plan to conduct the research, development, and financing of sustainable energy technologies that reduce the level of carbon dioxide and other pollutants from continued use, thus reducing our dependence upon oil and fossil fuels. We can do it if we apply the Abraham Lincoln type capital homesteading to it. Now there are those who are saying, Walter Fauntroy, you're dreaming if you think that the application of the wisdom of Diodorus Siculus, that you cannot entrust the defense of a country to those who own no part of it. If you think you can make that relevant for the year 2008, you're dreaming. When you hear me say that, and when I hear people say that, I remember that's what they told Joshua and Caleb. You remember from our Judeo-Christian Muslim biblical heritage. They told them, you're dreaming if you think you're going to be able to walk around the walled city of Jericho and the walls will come tumbling down. But they believed it, and they did it. You ought to know that, so in fact, they told Martin Luther King Jr., who 40 years ago gave that speech from that spot there, I have a dream. They said, you're dreaming if you think that by exercising your First Amendment rights of peaceful assembly in Birmingham and in Montgomery and in Selma, you get them to take the 4 white only signs down. But Martin Luther King Jr. was not just a dreamer of what people thought were impossible dreams. He did not rest until he made of his impossible dreams living realities. And for that reason, I certainly believe that our opportunity today to pull together that same coalition of conscience, that beloved community of people of every race and every creed and every color, to work together on capital homesteading can produce what the world needs and what we in America need today desperately. I want to close with words from Paul Robeson. Nothing in the annals of music is as stirring to me as the rich, resonant, robust tones of Robeson rippling over a number like Joshua fit the battle around Jericho. Joshua fit the battle around Jericho, and the walls come tumbling down. Up to the walls of Jericho they marched with spear in hand. Go blow them ram horns, Joshua cried, because the battle am in my hands. I remember Paul Robeson's autobiography, Here I Stand. I remember it as we stand here on this principle of capital homesteading as the hope of the nation and the world. He wrote, and I quote him, in the glow of lamplight on my desk, I gaze upon one of the wondrous signs of our time, full of hope and promise for the future. And I smile to see in the newspaper photographs the faces so bright, so solemn of our young heroes, the children of Little Rock. Their names are Elizabeth Eckford, Carlotta Walls, Minnie Jean Brown, Gloria Ray, Thelma Motherson, Jefferson Thomas, Ernest Green, and to this list may be added the names of all of the black and white young people of the decade of the 60s, who with their courage established the cadences to which a whole generation was to march in pursuit of freedom. The patter of their feet, he said, as they marched through Jim Crow barriers to attend school, became the thunder of the marching men of Joshua, and the world rocked beneath their tread. I like that old Negro spiritual. It said, in its simple yet colorful depiction of that great moment in biblical history, that Joshua fit the battle round Jericho and the walls came tumbling down. These words I've given you just as they were given us by their unknown, long dead, dark-skinned originator. Some now long gone black bard bequeathed to posterity these words in ungrammatical form, yet with emphatic pertinence for us today. The battle to win capital homesteading for the nation and for the world, that battle is in our hands. Let's go forward and do it in memory of the wisdom of Abraham Lincoln.